Join me as I dive into the wild world of werewolves and try to figure out what it really means for a dormant wolf to awaken as the alpha king's mate. Have you ever wondered what happens when a wolf that's been sleeping inside you for 24 years suddenly wakes up in the middle of a life or death battle? Well, that's exactly what we're about to explore. Start with a shocking revelation about dormant wolves and their hidden powers to pique interest. These rare shifters carry a secret that could change everything about pack hierarchy and power dynamics. Today, we're introducing the concept of a dormant wolf discovering her true identity as the mate of the Alpha King, setting the tone for an epic journey filled with danger, passion, and transformation. The blood splattered across Marlo Jensen's white sneakers as the rogue wolf's claws slashed through the air where her face had been a second before. She didn't know how she'd move that fast. She'd never moved that fast in her entire life. Her body seemed to operate on instinct she didn't possess, muscle memory she'd never earned. The creature snarled, its eyes glowing amber in the darkness of the parking garage, and Marlo's hands came up in a defensive position she'd definitely never learned in her Tuesday night self-defense class. This was impossible. Wolves didn't exist. Werewolves were fiction, mythology, Halloween costumes, and fantasy novels. Yet here she stood, facing down a monster that looked like a wolf had mated with a nightmare and produced something that wanted to rip her throat out. The wolf lunged again. Marlo felt something crack open inside her chest, like an egg breaking, like a door that had been sealed her entire life suddenly slamming open. Heat flooded her veins, power she couldn't name and didn't understand. Her vision sharpened until she could count the individual hairs in the creature's matted fur. She could smell its rage, its hunger, its sickness. The rot of rogue madness clung to it like a second skin. Her hand shot out and caught the wolf by the throat mid-leap. The impact should have knocked her back, should have broken bones, should have done anything except what it did, which was stop the creature dead in its tracks. Marlo stared at her own hand, at the way her fingers dug into the thick fur and held this massive predator like it weighed nothing at all. What the hell was happening to her? The wolf thrashed, claws scraping against her forearms and drawing blood, but Marlo's grip didn't falter. The thing in her chest, the power that had cracked open like an awakening, surged harder. She felt her canines lengthen, felt her fingernails sharpen into claws. Terror and exhilaration warred inside her as she realized she was changing into something that shouldn't exist. Then she sensed him. The awareness hit her like a freight train, like lightning finding ground, like every romance novel's description of destiny rolled into one overwhelming moment. Someone powerful was approaching, someone whose very presence made the rogue wolf in her grasp whimper and go still. The air itself seemed to shift, to recognize authority that transcended normal understanding. Darius Blackthorne stepped into the parking garage, like he owned it. Considering he owned half the city, maybe he did. The CEO of Blackthorne Industries moved with lethal grace, his 6'4" frame radiating the kind of confidence that came from never losing a fight. His dark hair was immaculately styled despite the late hour, his tailored suit probably worth more than Marlo's annual salary as a junior accountant. But it was his eyes that caught her, gold-flecked amber that seemed to glow in the fluorescent lighting. Those eyes locked onto her, and Marlo felt her entire world tilt sideways. "Mate," her wolf whispered inside her mind, a voice she'd never heard before, instinctive and absolute. The word resonated in her bones, in her blood, in every cell of her body. This man, this stranger who looked at her like she was the only thing in the universe that mattered, was somehow hers. Darius froze mid-step, His nostrils flared as he scented the air, and Marlowe watched his pupils dilate, watched something feral and possessive flash across his aristocratic features. His wolf recognized her the same moment hers recognized him. The mate bond snapped into place between them like a physical thing, like a rope pulled taut, like gravity asserting itself after a lifetime of floating. Impossible, he breathed, his voice a deep rumble that Marlowe felt in her core. You're human. I checked, thoroughly. Marlowe blinked at him, still holding the struggling rogue by the throat. I was human, she managed. Like 15 minutes ago, I was definitely human. Darius moved then, faster than should be possible, crossing the distance between them in a heartbeat. He grabbed the rogue from her grip and snapped its neck with a casual efficiency that should have horrified her. Instead, Marlowe found herself grateful, relieved, and disturbingly aroused by the display of lethal power. The rogue's body hit the concrete with a heavy thud. Darius turned back to her, and up close he was overwhelming. He smelled like pine forests and thunderstorms and something uniquely him that made her wolf practically purr. Heat radiated from his body, and Marlowe realized she was shaking. Adrenaline and terror and desperate attraction all mixing into a cocktail that left her dizzy. "You're the accountant," Darius said, his gaze raking over her like a physical touch. "Fourth floor. You started 3 months ago. You know who I am?" Marlowe's voice came out breathier than she intended. Her wolf was doing something strange inside her chest, pressing against her ribcage like it wanted to burst free and claim this man immediately. "I know every person in my building." His hand came up, and Marlowe's breath caught as his fingers traced the scratches on her forearm. The wounds were already healing, flesh knitting back together at an impossible rate. "But I didn't know you were Pack. I would have scented it." "I'm not Pack. I'm not anything." Marlowe pulled her arm back, suddenly desperate for space to think. "I'm an accountant from Wisconsin who pays her taxes on time and whose biggest rebellion is occasionally staying up past 10 on weeknights." Darius's lips quirked into something that might have been a smile if it hadn't been quite so predatory. "You were an accountant from Wisconsin. Now you're a shifter. And not just any shifter, my mate." The word sent electricity down Marlowe's spine. Her wolf responded to it, to him, with an enthusiasm that terrified her. She took a step back, then another. "This isn't real. I'm having a psychotic break, or I'm in a coma, or you're in danger." Darius moved with her, matching her retreat step for step. "Rogues don't attack randomly in downtown areas. Someone sent that wolf after you specifically." Marlowe's back hit her car, and Darius caged her in, one hand on either side of her head. He didn't touch her, but she felt him everywhere, felt the heat of his body and the power radiating from him like a sun she'd gotten too close to. This close, she could see the flecks of green in his amber eyes, could see the barely controlled hunger etched into his perfect features. "Why would anyone send a rogue after me?" she whispered. "I'm nobody." "You stopped being nobody the moment your wolf woke up." His voice was rough, his control clearly fraying. Dormant wolves are rare, powerful, the kind of power that tips the balance between packs. And now you're awake, and you're mine. And every alpha in the territory is going to want either to control you or eliminate you. Marlowe's heart hammered against her ribs. "I don't want to be powerful. I want to go back to my apartment and pretend this never happened." "Too late." Darius leaned in, his breath ghosting across her ear. "Your wolf chose me. The bond is set. You can run from it, from me, but you can't break it. And right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and every threat that's about to come hunting." She should push him away, should knee him somewhere painful and run. But her body had other ideas, melting against him despite her mind's protests. Her wolf wanted him to touch her, wanted to feel his hands on her skin, wanted things Marlowe had only read about in very private browser windows. "I don't even know you," she protested weakly. Darius pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "Then let me fix that. Come home with me. Let me protect you while you learn what you are, what we are together." "And if I say no?" Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Then I follow you anyway, because you're my mate, Marlo Jensen, and I don't let what's mine walk into danger alone." The possessiveness should have made her angry. Instead, it made her wolf practically dance with satisfaction. Marlo closed her eyes, trying to find any shred of the normal life she'd woken up to that morning. Gone. All of it gone the moment that Rogue had attacked, the moment her wolf had woken up, the moment Darius Blackthorn had looked at her like she was something precious and terrifying all at once. "One night," she heard herself say, "you explain everything. Keep me alive through whatever this is, and then I decide what happens next." Darius's smile was pure satisfaction. "One night," he agreed. "But fair warning, little wolf, one night with me and you won't want to leave." The arrogance should have been off-putting. Somehow, it just made her want him more. Marlo followed Darius to his car, a sleek black SUV that probably cost more than her entire life, and tried not to think about how her world had just exploded into something unrecognizable. Her phone buzzed in her pocket with texts from her roommate asking where she was, and Marlo realized she had no idea how to explain any of this. "Hey Sarah, sorry I'm late. Got attacked by a werewolf and discovered I'm actually a werewolf too, and also apparently mated to a billionaire alpha who makes my new wolf instincts want to do very inappropriate things. Be home later." "Maybe." "Yeah, that would go over well." Darius opened the passenger door for her with old-fashioned courtesy that seemed at odds with the predatory intensity rolling off him in waves. Marlo slid into leather seats that probably cost more than her car and watched as he rounded to the driver's side. Even the way he moved was different now that she could see it. The lethal grace, the coiled power, the absolute confidence of a predator at the top of the food chain. "The Rogue called you Alpha King," Marlo said as he started the engine. "That's not just a CEO thing, is it?" "No." Darius pulled out of the parking garage, his hands steady on the wheel. "I lead the Eastern Continental Pack, 50,000 wolves across 12 states. The human corporation is just cover, a way to operate in your world without drawing attention." 50,000. Marlo's mind struggled to process the number. "And they all just follow you?" "They follow strength, power, the ability to protect them from threats." He glanced at her, and the heat in his gaze made her squirm. "They follow me because I've never lost a challenge, never failed to defend what's mine." "I'm not yours," Marlo said automatically, but her wolf whined in protest at the lie. "Your wolf disagrees." Darius's hand moved from the wheel to her thigh, the touch sending electricity through her entire body. "I can feel her through the bond. She wants me to touch you, wants me to claim you, wants me to pull this car over and show you exactly what being mine means." Marlo's breath caught. Heat pooled low in her belly, and she pressed her thighs together against the sudden ache. "You're very sure of yourself." "I'm sure of us." His hand squeezed gently before returning to the wheel. "But I'm also patient enough to let you catch up. Your wolf just woke up. You're overwhelmed, I get that." The consideration surprised her. Everything about Darius screamed dominant alpha male who took what he wanted. But here he was, giving her space despite the bond practically screaming at both of them to finish what nature had started. They drove through the city in charged silence, and Marlo watched the buildings give way to estates, then to forest. Darius's home turned out to be a massive compound hidden behind security gates and towering pines. The main house looked like something from a magazine spread, all modern glass and natural wood, blending wealth with wilderness in a way that probably cost a fortune to architect. "Welcome home," Darius said, and the words felt like a promise and a threat all at once. Marlo stepped out of the car and immediately sensed others. Wolves. Dozens of them, their presence pressing against her newly awakened senses like weight. She tensed, her wolf rising to the surface, ready to fight or flee. Easy. Darius was beside her instantly, his hand on the small of her back. They're pack. They won't hurt you. They're watching us. Marlo could feel eyes in the darkness, could sense the curiosity and suspicion rolling off unseen observers. You're unmated and standing next to their alpha king radiating a mate bond. Of course they're watching. Darius guided her toward the house, his touch possessive and grounding. They're also curious about the dormant wolf who just woke up strong enough to hold a rogue one-handed on her first shift. Inside, the house was even more impressive. Soaring ceilings, furniture that managed to look both expensive and comfortable, floor-to-ceiling windows that showed nothing but forest. It should have felt empty, but Marlo could sense the life humming through it. Could feel the pack's presence like a living thing just beyond the walls. Drink? Darius moved to a bar that probably stocked bottles worth more than her car. Answers, Marlo countered. You promised me explanations. He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid anyway and handed her one. Ask. Marlo took the glass but didn't drink. Why was my wolf dormant? Why didn't I shift as a child like I'm guessing normal werewolves do? Dormancy happens for different reasons. Darius leaned against the bar, his intense focus entirely on her. Sometimes it's trauma. Sometimes it's suppression by a stronger wolf. Sometimes it's protection, a parent or pack member binding the wolf to keep a child safe. My parents were human. Normal, boring, wonderfully human parents. Marlo's chest tightened at the thought of them. They died in a car accident when I was 6. Something flickered across Darius's face. Understanding, sympathy, calculation. And you went into foster care after that? 3 different homes before I aged out at 18. Marlo took a sip of the whiskey and nearly choked. It burned going down, but warmth spread through her chest. You think one of my birth parents was a werewolf? I think one of your parents was powerful enough that someone wanted your wolf suppressed. Darius moved closer, crowding into her space again. And now that you're awake, whoever did the binding is going to know. They're going to come for you. Fear spiked through her. To finish the job? To control you, or to eliminate the threat you represent? His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with surprising gentlacy. But they'll have to go through me first, and I don't lose, Marlo, ever. The protection in his voice, the absolute certainty, made her wolf practically melt. Marlo leaned into his touch before she could stop herself, and Darius's eyes darkened with hunger. You feel it, don't you? His voice dropped to a rough whisper. The pull, the need, your wolf wants mine. That doesn't mean I have to give in to it. But even as she said it, Marlo knew it was a losing battle. The mate bond hummed between them, growing stronger with every passing moment, with every breath, with every heartbeat that synced to his. No, Darius agreed. You don't have to, but you want to. He was right. God help her, he was absolutely right. Marlo had never wanted anyone the way she wanted him, with an urgency that felt like drowning, like burning, like something essential she'd been missing her entire life suddenly within reach. Her carefully controlled, sensible, normal life felt like a costume she'd been wearing. And here in the darkness with Darius Blackthorn, she finally felt like herself. Before she could second-guess it, before logic could reassert itself, Marlo closed the distance between them and kissed him. Darius growled against her lips, the sound vibrating through her entire body, and then his arms were around her, pulling her flush against him. He kissed like he did everything else, with complete confidence and devastating skill, taking control effortlessly while somehow still making her feel like she was the one deciding everything. The whiskey glass fell from her hand, hitting the floor with a distant crash neither of them acknowledged. Marlowe's fingers tangled in his dark hair, and Darius lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her deeper into the house. The bond between them flared white-hot, demanding completion, demanding claim, demanding everything. Darius pressed her against a wall, his mouth moving to her throat, teeth scraping over her pulse point in a way that made her wolf howl with satisfaction. This was instinct, pure and overwhelming, the mate bond driving them both toward an inevitable conclusion. "Tell me to stop," Darius growled against her skin. "Tell me you want to wait, and I will. But Marlowe, I need to hear you say it because my control is about 10 seconds from snapping." Marlowe should say it, should be sensible, should take time to think this through. But her wolf had already decided. And for once in her carefully planned life, Marlowe decided to trust instinct over logic. "Don't stop," she whispered, and felt Darius's control shatter like glass. The night blurred into sensation, Darius's hands on her skin, his mouth everywhere, the overwhelming rightness of finally giving in to what the bond demanded. When he carried her to his bedroom and laid her down on sheets that smelled like him, Marlowe felt her last reservations dissolve. This was fate. This was destiny. This was her mate, and her wolf knew it with absolute certainty, even if her human mind was still catching up. Their joining was inevitable and earth-shattering, the mate bond completing with a snap that Marlowe felt in her very soul. She cried out as pleasure and power and connection all crashed through her at once. And Darius's answering roar told her he felt it too, the final piece clicking into place, the bond sealing them together in a way that transcended physical connection. Afterward, lying in his arms with her body still humming and her wolf finally, blissfully content, Marlowe realized there was no going back. Whatever her life had been before tonight, it was gone. She was his now, as completely as he was hers, and the knowledge terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. No regrets? Darius's voice rumbled against her ear, his arms tightening around her possessively. Marlowe considered lying, considered playing it cool, but the bond made deception impossible. "Ask me again in the morning when my brain starts working again." His laugh was low and satisfied. "Fair enough. Sleep, little wolf. Tomorrow we figure out who suppressed your wolf and why. Tonight you're safe." And wrapped in her mate's arms with the bond singing contentment through every nerve, Marlowe actually believed him. For the first time since that rogue had attacked, she felt safe, protected, home. It wouldn't last. She knew that instinctively. Whatever had kept her wolf dormant for 24 years, whoever had bound her power, they were still out there, still a threat. But tonight she let herself have this. The comfort, the connection, the shocking discovery that soulmates and destiny and all those things she'd thought were just stories were actually real. Tomorrow would bring answers and dangers and complications. Tonight, she just let herself be his. Morning came too soon. Sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that Darius apparently didn't believe in covering. Marlowe blinked awake to find herself alone in the massive bed, though she could still feel Darius through the bond, a warm presence somewhere in the house, alert and powerful even from a distance. She sat up, taking stock. Her body felt different, stronger, more alive than it ever had. Her senses were sharper, and she could hear conversations happening somewhere in the house, could smell coffee and bacon and something that smelled like pack, multiple wolves moving through the space below. Reality crashed back with uncomfortable force. She'd slept with her boss, who was also apparently a werewolf king, who was also her fated mate according to magical biology she'd discovered existed less than 24 hours ago. Sarah was definitely going to have questions when Marlowe finally made it home. If she made it home. The thought should have panicked her, but her wolf just stretched contentedly, satisfied in a way that made Marlowe blush, remembering why. The bond between her and Darius hummed with warmth, and she could feel his attention turn toward her even from wherever he was in the house. Marlowe found her clothes from last night, cleaned and folded on a chair, expensive gesture or werewolf weird, and dressed quickly. She needed coffee and explanations, preferably in that order. The house in daylight was even more impressive, all open spaces and natural light. Marlowe followed the smell of coffee and voices down a curved staircase to a kitchen that looked like something from a home design show. Darius stood at the island with two other people, a tall woman with auburn hair and shrewd green eyes, and a man who looked like he could bench press a car. All three turned as Marlowe entered, and she felt the weight of their assessment like a physical thing. "Good morning, mate." Darius's voice was warm, possessive, claiming her in front of his pack without hesitation. He crossed to her and pulled her into a kiss that left her breathless and very aware they had an audience. When he finally released her, Marlowe was gratified to see his companions looking mildly uncomfortable with the display. "Coffee?" Darius asked, already pouring her a cup. "Please." Marlowe accepted it gratefully and tried not to squirm under the continued scrutiny. "And maybe introductions?" "Marlowe, this is Celine, my second." He nodded to the auburn-haired woman. "And Marcus, head of security, the dormant wolf who held a rogue one-handed on her first awakening." Celine's voice was cool, assessing. "Color us intrigued." "Color me confused," Marlowe countered. 24 hours ago, I was worried about quarterly reports. Now I'm apparently part of a werewolf pack and mated to—" She gestured vaguely at Darius. "The most powerful alpha on the continent," Marcus supplied helpfully, "who never found his mate in 600 years of looking. So yeah, people are curious." Marlowe choked on her coffee. 600? Shifters age slowly. Darius's hand settled on her lower back, grounding and possessive. "I've been looking for you for a very long time." The weight of that statement, the implication of centuries of searching, made Marlowe's chest tight. Before she could process it, Celine cleared her throat. "As touching as this is, we have a problem." She set a tablet on the counter, and Marlowe saw surveillance footage from what looked like her apartment building. 3 separate rogue attacks in your neighborhood last night, all focused on your building, all eliminated by our patrols, but the message is clear. Someone really wants me dead. Marlowe's stomach dropped. Or captured. Darius's voice went hard, his alpha power filling the room, which means we need to figure out who bound your wolf and why before they send something we can't stop. Celine swiped to another image, a complex magical symbol that meant nothing to Marlowe but made both Darius and Marcus tense. This was carved into your apartment door. Recognition spell. The moment you fully woke, whoever said it knew. "How do we break it?" Marlowe asked. "We don't." Darius pulled her closer, his body a solid wall of protection at her back. "We trace it back to the caster and end this." Marcus crossed his arms. "That's not going to be easy. This level of binding magic, only a handful of wolves on the continent have that kind of power, and most of them are allied with my enemies," Darius finished grimly. "Which means this isn't just about Marlowe. Someone's making a move against me, and they're using my mate to do it." The political implications made Marlowe's head spin. "Maybe we should break the bond," she heard herself say. "If I'm putting you in danger—" The room went dead silent. Darius spun her around, his eyes flashing gold with his wolf's rage. "Never say that again," he growled, and power rolled off him in waves that made both Celine and Marcus take a step back. "You're mine, Marlowe. Breaking the bond would destroy us both. Is that what you want?" "No!" The word burst out before she could stop it, her wolf rising in protest at even the thought of losing him. "But I don't want to be the weakness that gets you killed either." His expression softened slightly. "You're not my weakness. You're my greatest strength. A dormant wolf awakening doesn't just mean power, it means purpose, destiny. You were kept dormant for a reason, and now that you're awake, we're going to find out what that reason is. And then, Marlowe asked quietly, and then we burn down whoever tried to keep us apart. The promise in his voice was absolute. No one threatens what's mine and lives to tell about it. The possessiveness should have bothered her. Instead, Marlowe found it comforting. She'd spent her whole life feeling like she didn't quite belong anywhere, like she was always on the outside looking in. But here, wrapped in Darius's arms with the mate bond humming between them, she finally felt like she'd found her place, even if that place came with rogue attacks and magical conspiracies. "So what's our next move?" she asked. Celine picked up the tablet again. "I've got feelers out with the witch covens. If this is binding magic, someone had to craft it. Witches gossip worse than wolves. We'll find the caster." "In the meantime," Darius added, "Marlowe stays here, under pack protection. No going back to your apartment. Your job." "I have a life," Marlowe protested. "A roommate who's probably freaking out, bills to pay, responsibilities, which we'll handle." Darius's tone left no room for argument. "Celine, get someone to pack up Marlowe's apartment and settle things with her roommate. Marcus, I want security doubled on the perimeter and eyes on anyone who gets within a mile of this property." They both nodded and left, leaving Marlowe alone with her mate in the sprawling kitchen. She should argue, should insist on having some control over her own life. But the truth was, she had no idea how to navigate this new world, and Darius did. "I'm not trying to control you," he said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "But I can't protect you if you're scattered across the city living a human life. My enemies know what you are now. They know you're my mate. That makes you a target. Your greatest strength or biggest weakness," Marlowe said wryly, "depending on who you ask." "My everything," Darius corrected, pulling her into his arms. "And I will burn this world to ash before I let anyone take you from me." The intensity should have been frightening. Instead, it made her wolf purr with satisfaction. This was an alpha male in his prime, powerful beyond measure, and he'd chosen her, protected her, claimed her. Every instinct Marlowe had recently discovered said to trust him, to let him lead while she figured out what being a wolf actually meant. "Okay," she found herself saying, "I'll stay, for now. But Darius, I need to understand what I am, what I can do. I can't just hide here while you and your pack fight my battles." Pride flashed in his eyes. "Then we train you, starting today." The next hours blurred into a crash course in werewolf basics. Marlowe learned that shifting was both easier and harder than she expected, her wolf eager to emerge, but her human mind struggling to let go of control. She learned that the pack bond was real, a network of awareness that connected all wolves under an alpha's leadership. She learned that she was stronger, faster, more durable than any human, but still new enough that trained wolves could take her down easily. She also learned that watching Darius shift into a massive black wolf that radiated pure alpha power was possibly the most attractive thing she'd ever seen, which probably said something concerning about her psychological state. By the time evening approached, Marlowe was exhausted, covered in dirt from being thrown into it repeatedly by Marcus during training, and more confused than ever about her new life. But she was also happy? The word felt strange after a lifetime of just existing, of going through motions, of never quite feeling like she fit anywhere. Here, even covered in bruises and struggling to understand pack dynamics, she felt like she belonged. Enough for today. Darius's voice pulled her from her thoughts. He'd been watching her train from the porch, and now he descended the stairs with that lethal grace she was starting to recognize as distinctly alpha. "You're dead on your feet." "I'm fine," Marlowe lied, swaying slightly as another wave of exhaustion hit. Darius caught her effortlessly, lifting her into his arms despite her protest. You shifted 4 times today and sparred with my head of security. You're allowed to be tired. Being carried was embarrassing. Being carried by Darius while his pack watched was mortifying. But Marlowe was too exhausted to protest beyond a token grumble, and honestly, his arms felt too good to fight very hard. He carried her inside and up to his room. Their room? She wasn't sure of the terminology yet, and set her gently on the bed. Bath or sleep? Bath, Marlowe decided. She was covered in dirt and sweat and probably smelled terrible by human standards. By wolf standards. Well, Darius seemed to like how she smelled regardless, which was probably the mate bond doing its thing. The bathroom was obscenely luxurious, all marble and heated floors, and a tub that could double as a small pool. Darius started the water while Marlowe struggled with her training clothes, her exhausted muscles protesting every movement. She felt rather than saw him move behind her, his hands gentle as he helped her undress. "I can do it," she mumbled. I know. He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "Let me take care of you anyway." The bath was heaven. Darius climbed in behind her and Marlowe let herself relax against his chest, the warm water and his solid presence combining into something that felt dangerously like contentment. His hands worked shampoo through her hair with surprising gentleness for someone so lethal, and Marlowe found herself drifting in a haze of exhaustion and comfort. "Tell me about your life," Darius said quietly. "Before all this." Marlowe considered the question. "Boring. I worked. I paid bills. I had 2 friends and a roommate who thought I needed to date more. I read romance novels and pretended I didn't wish my life was more exciting." She laughed softly. "Careful what you wish for, right? Do you regret it?" His arms tightened around her. "Being pulled into this world?" "I should," Marlowe admitted. "But no, it's terrifying and overwhelming and I have no idea what I'm doing. But I also feel more alive than I ever have. Is that crazy?" "That's the bond talking, and your wolf finally being free." Darius's lips brushed her temple. "You were never meant to be human, Marlowe. You were always this. Someone just tried to take it from you." The reminder brought back the questions neither of them had answers to yet. Who had bound her wolf? Why? And what did they want now that she was awake? Before Marlowe could spiral into worry, Darius lifted her from the bath and wrapped her in a towel so soft it probably cost more than her car. He dried her with gentle efficiency, then carried her back to bed despite her protests that she could walk. Once they were both under the covers, he pulled her close, and Marlowe felt the last of her tension drain away. "Sleep," Darius murmured against her hair. "Tomorrow we find answers. Tonight you're safe. Promise." She knew it was childish to ask, but something about the darkness made her fears more immediate. "I promise." His hand settled over her heart, right where the mate bond hummed between them. "I've waited 6 centuries for you, Marlowe Jensen. Nothing and no one is taking you from me now." She believed him. Against all logic and sanity, she believed him. Marlowe drifted off to sleep, wrapped in her mate's arms, the pack bond humming around them like a lullaby. And for the first time since her wolf had woken, she felt like maybe everything would actually be okay. She was wrong. The attack came at midnight, too coordinated to be anything but planned. Marlowe jerked awake to Darius already moving, already shifting, his wolf form massive and terrifying in the darkness. Through the bond, she felt his rage, his fear for